The flight home was quiet, the kind of quiet that let thoughts creep in. I wasn't even supposed to be on it. My business trip to Chicago had been scheduled through the weekend, but the last meeting wrapped up early, and I managed to catch an earlier flight. It felt like a small win. An extra night at home, an unexpected surprise for Evelyn. We weren't the spontaneous type anymore, but I figured she'd appreciate it. I sent her a quick text before takeoff. Landing earlier than expected. Can't wait to see you. No response. Not unusual. Evelyn was a lawyer, always buried in work. It made sense. By the time I landed and grabbed my luggage, it was nearly 10. The drive home was familiar, calming in its predictability. Our house was in a quiet neighborhood, the kind with perfectly maintained lawns and predictable routines. It fit us. Our life was built on structure, weekly grocery lists, scheduled date nights, planned conversations about the future. I'd always believed that's what made us strong. Stability, precision, order. Pulling into the driveway, I noticed right away, her car wasn't there. Strange. She hadn't mentioned any late meetings or dinner plans. I checked my phone again. Still no response. My stomach tightened, but I brushed it off. Maybe she ran to the store or got caught up at work. Inside, the house was silent. The kind of silence that didn't feel right. I loosened my tie, walked through the kitchen, and saw a half-empty glass of wine on the counter. Not fresh, but not old either. Something about it nagged at me. I checked the living room, the study. Nothing. I called her. Straight to voicemail. And that's when something cold settled in my chest. Evelyn was meticulous, always letting me know where she was, always quick to respond. This was off. A thought crossed my mind, one I immediately pushed away. I trusted her. We had built this life together on trust, on rules that kept things in place. But as I stood there in our empty home, staring at that half-finished glass of wine, I felt it for the first time. Something was wrong. I paced the kitchen, phone still in my hand, debating whether to call her again. I told myself not to overthink it. Evelyn worked late all the time. Maybe she had drinks with coworkers and lost track of time. Maybe her phone died. Logical explanations, all of them. But none of them sat right. I opened our shared location on my phone. We didn't use it often, but it was there, a practical thing we set up when our schedules got hectic. I tapped on her name and watched the little blue dot load. It wasn't at her office. I stared at the screen, my breath suddenly too loud in the quiet house. The location showed her in an upscale neighborhood across town, somewhere I didn't recognize. A residential area, not a restaurant or a bar. I zoomed in. The pin was fixed on a house. My pulse picked up, but I tried to reason with myself. Maybe she was visiting a friend. Maybe it was work-related. But at nearly 11 at night? Without a single text or call. I grabbed my keys. The drive felt like a blur. The whole time, I kept checking her location, hoping it would move, hoping I'd see it shift back home, that she'd call with an explanation that made all this unnecessary. But it didn't. The blue dot stayed put. When I pulled onto the street, I parked a few houses down, out of view. It was a beautiful neighborhood, the kind with clean sidewalks and well-manicured hedges. Big houses with modern architecture, all glass and expensive lighting. And there, in the driveway of one of them, was Evelyn's car. I gripped the wheel, my knuckles white. My heart pounded, each beat heavy and slow. I knew this car. I'd helped her pick it out. I'd been the one to take it for servicing, to make sure everything ran smoothly. It was as much a part of our structured life as our morning coffee routine, as the Sunday nights spent planning the week ahead. It didn't belong here. I sat there for a long time, staring at that car, at the house it was parked in front of. The windows were lit up, faint shadows moving behind the curtains. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. I reached for my phone and checked our texts again. My message from earlier, still unread. Then I did something I never thought I'd have to do. I searched my contacts and called Paul Reading. He was a name I knew well. Evelyn had mentioned him often, a senior colleague at her firm. Smart, ambitious, well-respected. They had worked on cases together. She'd always spoken about him with admiration, sometimes even frustration when he was too demanding. But never anything more. The phone rang. Once. Twice. Then it went to voicemail. I exhaled shakily and looked back at the house. It was late. She wasn't answering. Her car was parked in another man's driveway. I had always trusted Evelyn. Trusted the life we built, the routines that kept us grounded. But standing there, staring at that house, all I could feel was the quiet, creeping realization that everything I believed in might have just shattered. I don't remember getting out of the car. 1 second, I was gripping the steering wheel, my mind racing, my pulse hammering in my ears. The next, I was standing on the sidewalk, staring up at the house where my wife was. The place was modern, sleek, the kind of house that belonged to someone who had made it. Big windows, ambient lighting, a front door that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. It didn't feel like a home. It felt like a statement. Evelyn's car sat in the driveway like an accusation, every detail of it familiar. The keychain I bought her last Christmas, the slight scrape on the rear bumper from a parking garage incident she never got fixed. It was her car, no mistake. And she was inside. My phone was still in my hand, and before I could think too much about it, I called her again. I stood there on the street, the glow of my screen illuminating my fingers, waiting. 1 ring. 2. Straight to voicemail. I clenched my jaw and stared at the house. I should have left. Driven home. Waited for her to come back and explain herself. That's what a rational man would do. But in that moment, standing there, knowing she was inside with another man, reason didn't matter. I needed to see it. Needed to know for sure. I walked up the driveway, slow and steady, like I wasn't about to do something that could wreck my life. My heartbeat was a hammer against my ribs. The front door had those tall, narrow windows on either side, the kind with frosted glass that blurred the inside. I saw movement, shadows shifting. Laughter. A man's voice, low and easy. Paul Reading's voice. Something inside me snapped. I stepped up to the door and knocked. Firm. Measured. The way I'd knock on a client's door before a meeting. There was a pause inside, then footsteps approaching. The door opened, and Paul stood there, holding a half-full glass of wine. He wasn't surprised. He wasn't scrambling to explain why my wife was in his house. He just looked at me, eyebrows raising slightly, like I was a puzzle he'd already figured out. "Landon," he said smoothly, taking a slow sip from his glass. "Didn't expect to see you tonight." I didn't respond. Couldn't. My eyes moved past him, into the house. And there she was. Evelyn stood near the kitchen, barefoot, wearing a dress I didn't recognize. Something casual, comfortable. A glass of wine in her hand. Her lips parted slightly when she saw me, her whole body going rigid. For a moment, none of us spoke. The air between us was thick with something I couldn't name yet. Then, Evelyn finally broke the silence. "Landon," she said, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it. What are you doing here?" I let the question hang there, because the real one was obvious. "What are you doing here, Evelyn?" She knew what I saw. Knew what this looked like. And yet, she didn't rush forward with an explanation, didn't come up with some ridiculous excuse. She just stood there, caught. Paul leaned against the doorframe, completely at ease. "Do you want to come in?" he asked, like this was nothing more than a friendly visit. Like he hadn't just been drinking wine with my wife in his house late at night. I looked at Evelyn. She looked at me. And in that moment, I knew. I knew everything. Evelyn's face said it all. She wasn't scrambling for an excuse. She wasn't apologizing. She wasn't even surprised to see me. I waited. I wanted to hear her say something, anything, but she just stood there, gripping her wine glass like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Her lips parted, then closed again. Paul, still leaning against the doorframe, swirled his drink lazily, watching us like he was enjoying a private show. He was confident. Too confident. Like a man who had already won. I exhaled slowly, trying to steady my voice. "You didn't answer my text." Evelyn blinked, like she was trying to process something simple but couldn't. Then, she glanced at Paul, just for a second. That single look told me everything. She was checking how to play this. How he wanted her to handle me. My stomach turned. She hesitated, then shook her head quickly. "I was going to call you when I got home." I let out a sharp laugh, more out of disbelief than humor. "When you got home," I repeated. "So what, I wasn't supposed to know you were here?" She swallowed. I was just talking with Paul. About work. Paul smiled at that, amused. Work, he repeated, raising his glass. I looked at him, finally letting myself really see him. He was exactly the kind of man Evelyn respected. Suave. Successful. A few years older, the kind who carried himself like nothing could touch him. He had money, power, and apparently my wife. The realization was like a fist to my ribs. I turned back to Evelyn, and she knew. She could see it in my face. The moment I understood that everything we had built, everything I thought was solid, was already gone. Just tell me the truth, I said quietly. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't accusing. I just wanted to hear her say it. To admit it. Her fingers tightened around the glass. I didn't mean. Didn't mean what, Evelyn? I pressed. Didn't mean for me to find out? Didn't mean to. My voice caught in my throat, the words turning to ash. Paul sighed, setting his glass down on a nearby table like he was already tired of this conversation. Landon, I don't think this is necessary. Maybe you should go home and cool off. Cool off. I snapped my eyes back to him. He was looking at me the same way you'd look at an employee who had outlived their usefulness. I had never hated anyone more in my life. Evelyn must have sensed it, because she finally stepped forward, reaching out like she could somehow contain this. Landon, please let's what? I cut her off. Talk? Now you want to talk. She flinched. The worst part wasn't the betrayal itself, it was that I hadn't even been a thought to her. She had been here in this house with this man, completely detached from everything we had built. From me. I turned back toward the door. You know what? Stay. Enjoy your wine. Evelyn's face twisted in panic. Landon. But I was already walking away, my whole body numb, my vision blurred. I reached my car, gripping the door handle so tightly my knuckles turned white. Behind me, I could hear Paul's voice, smooth and unaffected. Well, that could have gone worse. A door shut. And then silence. I stood there for a long time, staring at nothing. I should have driven home. I should have left, gone somewhere, anywhere. But instead, I did the one thing I never thought I'd do. I pulled out my phone, opened a tracking app one had barely ever used, and marked Evelyn's car as a saved location. I wasn't done. Not yet. I didn't drive home. I couldn't. My hands were shaking too badly. My mind was running in circles, replaying everything. Her silence, Paul's arrogance, the way she had looked at him before she answered me. Like she needed permission. Like he was the one calling the shots. I sat there in my car, gripping the wheel, staring at the house where my wife had just humiliated me. I thought about storming back inside, demanding answers, screaming, throwing something, doing something. But what would that change? Nothing. So I sat there instead, letting the anger settle into something else. Something colder. She thought she could lie to my face. She thought I would just accept some half-baked excuse and leave quietly. Paul thought I was beneath him, an afterthought in whatever game they were playing. No. I wasn't going to be blindsided again. If I wanted answers, I had to be smart. I had to think like them. I pulled out my phone and opened Evelyn's location again. The pin was still there, sitting in Paul's driveway, unmoving. I stared at it for a long time before switching apps. Paul reading. His name pulled up quickly. There were plenty of articles about him, his work, his achievements, photos of him at events, shaking hands with partners and CEOs. A golden boy in the legal world. He had influence. Power. A reputation to protect. And Evelyn? I knew my wife. She didn't take risks without a reason. There was always a plan, a calculation behind everything she did. If she was involved with Paul, it wasn't just because of some meaningless affair. There was something bigger. I searched his name alongside her firm. And that's when I found it. A small article, buried under legal updates. Nothing flashy. Nothing scandalous. But it was enough. Paul had been instrumental in pushing a controversial new promotion system at Reed, Lydia and Grant, one that rewarded performance beyond expectations. Vague language, but reading between the lines, it was clear what it meant. A culture of backdoor deals, unspoken favors, and people like Evelyn getting ahead by doing whatever it took to impress the right people. A sick feeling settled in my gut. Was that what this was? A trade-off? A power move? Had she sold our marriage for a step up the corporate ladder? I didn't know how deep it went yet, but I wasn't going to sit back and wait for her to come home and feed me another lie. I started my car and drove, not home, but to the one person who might be able to give me answers. Claire. She worked at the firm. She and Evelyn had never been close, but I'd met her a few times at office events. Smart, sharp, and always watching everything a little too carefully. If anyone knew what was really going on, it would be her. I pulled into a parking lot near her apartment and took a deep breath before dialing her number. It rang. Once. Twice. Then she picked up. Landon. Her voice was cautious. I need to talk to you, I said. It's about Evelyn. A pause. Then quieter, like she already knew. Where are you? Claire met me at a small diner just outside her apartment complex. It was nearly midnight by then, and the place was mostly empty, just a few tired waitresses and a guy in the corner nursing a cup of coffee like it was the only thing keeping him alive. She walked in wearing sweats and an old hoodie, her dark hair pulled into a messy bun. No makeup, no professional polish, just a woman who had clearly been ready to call it a night before I disrupted it. She slid into the booth across from me, eyes scanning my face. You look like hell. I let out a short, humorless laugh. Yeah, well. It's been that kind of night. She didn't say anything for a moment. Just watched me, waiting. I know Evelyn's sleeping with Paul, I said finally. No sugarcoating. No build-up. Just the truth, laid out raw. Claire didn't even blink. I leaned forward, lowering my voice. I need to know how deep this goes. She sighed, rubbing a hand over her face. Landon, Don't tell me you don't know, I cut in. You work there. You see things. She hesitated. Then she picked up a sugar packet from the table and started twisting it between her fingers, a nervous habit. How much do you already know? I know Paul's pushing some shady promotion system. I know Evelyn is involved. I just don't know why. Claire exhaled sharply. It's not just about promotions. It's about control. Influence. Paul doesn't just hand out favors, he collects debts. Anyone who gets ahead in that firm under his system owes him, big time. My stomach twisted. And Evelyn? She looked down at the table. She's been gunning for partner for a while. She's good, but she was never Paul's first choice. That changed a few months ago. Why? Claire hesitated. Then she met my eyes, her expression unreadable. Because she started spending more time with him. I let out a slow breath, my hands curling into fists under the table. So what, she sleeps her way to the top. The words felt like acid on my tongue. Claire flinched slightly but didn't argue. I looked away, staring out the window into the empty parking lot. The night felt colder somehow, sharper. She always said she did things the right way, I muttered, more to myself than to Claire. Worked for everything she had. Never took shortcuts. Claire gave me a sad smile. Maybe she believed that. Until she didn't. I forced myself to look at her again. How bad is it? How many people are involved? She sighed. Enough. And Paul? He's careful. He keeps everything off the books, off emails. Everything's done in whispers and favors. You don't play along, you don't get ahead. And if you really don't play along. She trailed off, but I caught her meaning. You get pushed out, I said. Or worse, she added, voice lower now. I frowned. What do you mean worse? Claire hesitated, then shook her head. I don't have proof, but people who cross Paul? Their careers don't just stall. They crash. Some of them leave the firm and suddenly can't find work anywhere. Some get hit with lawsuits over misconduct. A couple have had serious accidents. I stared at her. Are you telling me Paul's dangerous? She shrugged, but her expression was tight. I'm telling you he doesn't like loose ends. And if Evelyn's involved with him, she sighed. She's in deep, Landon. And now? So are you. I sat back, trying to process everything. My wife wasn't just cheating on me. She was tangled up in something bigger, something messier. And now that I knew, Paul Reading wasn't going to just let me walk away. I sat there, gripping my coffee cup, feeling the heat seep into my fingers, but it did nothing to warm the cold sinking into my chest. Evelyn wasn't just some unfaithful wife sneaking around behind my back. She was playing a dangerous game with a man who ruined people for fun. And now that I had stuck my nose in it, I was on Paul Reading's radar. Claire kept glancing around like she was expecting someone to be listening. The paranoia in her eyes wasn't normal. This wasn't just gossip or office drama. This was something real, something ugly. So what do? I asked finally. Claire let out a short laugh, but there was no humor in it. That depends. Are you trying to save your marriage, or burn it down? I scoffed. That marriage is already ashes. She nodded like she expected that. Then be smart. Don't make any moves yet. Paul's careful, but he's got weak spots. If you want to take him down, you need to be strategic. I frowned. Take him down? I never said. You think you can just walk away, she cut in, lowering her voice. Pretend you don't know anything? That's not how this works. Paul isn't the kind of man who hopes people keep quiet. He makes sure of it. I swallowed hard. You're saying he'll come after me. She looked me dead in the eye. I'm saying if he thinks you're a problem, he'll handle you. The weight of that hit me hard. My life was precise, structured, built on routine. I was the guy who planned everything down to the minute. And now? I was sitting in a diner at midnight, talking about a man who might try to ruin me because my wife decided her career was worth more than our vows. I forced a steady breath. How do I get ahead of him? Claire hesitated, then pulled out her phone and tapped something before sliding it across the table. It was a contact, Mark Reynolds. He used to work at the firm, she said. Got forced out last year. But he didn't go quietly. He's got dirt on Paul, real dirt. I don't know how much, but it's enough that Paul made sure no one would hire him again. I looked at the name on the screen. If you're serious about this, Claire continued, Mark's the guy you want to talk to. But be careful. Paul's got ears everywhere. I nodded slowly and took down the number. Claire sat back, studying me. What's your endgame, Landon? I exhaled. I don't know yet. But I'm not letting Evelyn and Paul walk away from this without consequences. She gave me a small, almost approving nod. Then be smart. Because once you start down this road, there's no going back. I sat there for a while after she left, staring at Mark's name on my phone. My marriage was gone. The life I built was crumbling. And now? Now, I was stepping into a fight I never asked for. The drive home felt different. The city lights blurred past me, but my mind wasn't in the present anymore. It was somewhere else, turning over every conversation, every little detail I had ignored about Evelyn these past few months. I had spent so much time trusting her, believing in our structure, our routines, that I never even saw the cracks forming right under my feet. But now I saw them. And I wasn't just going to patch them up and pretend everything was fine. When I pulled into the driveway, the house was dark. Evelyn still wasn't home. A part of me had expected that. The other part had hoped she'd be sitting inside, waiting, scrambling to explain herself. But there was nothing. No text, no missed calls. I stepped inside and shut the door behind me, standing in the quiet for a long moment. Our house felt unfamiliar now. The furniture we picked out together, the framed photos from vacations, none of it felt real anymore. It was just a stage, a perfectly curated illusion. I checked her location again. Still at Paul's house. I clenched my jaw and stuffed my phone in my pocket. No more wasting time. I grabbed a drink from the cabinet. Not wine, not something slow and sippable. Whiskey. Something that burned. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my phone, debating whether to call Mark Reynolds. Claire said he had dirt on Paul. The kind of dirt that got him blacklisted from the industry. If anyone could tell me just how far Paul's corruption went, it was him. But the moment I made that call, there was no turning back. This wasn't just about a cheating wife anymore. It was bigger. I exhaled sharply and dialed. The phone rang once. Twice. Then a gruff voice answered. Who the hell is this? I leaned forward, gripping my glass. Mark. My name is Landon. I think we need to talk. A pause. Then, more cautious. About what? About Paul Reading. The line went dead. I pulled the phone back, staring at the screen. He had hung up on me. I called again. This time, it rang and rang until voicemail picked up. I let out a frustrated breath, rubbing my temple. So Mark wasn't eager to talk. Fine. I wasn't giving up that easily. I downed the rest of my drink, grabbed my laptop, and started searching. If Mark wouldn't talk to me, I'd find my own way in. After about 30 minutes of digging, I found an old article, one that barely made waves when it was published a year ago. It mentioned Mark's sudden departure from Reed, Lydia and Grant but framed it as a mutual decision, like he had simply moved on. But then there was a single line buried in the article that caught my attention. An anonymous complaint was filed regarding ethical concerns within the firm, but no formal investigation was pursued. I frowned. That had to be Mark. He tried to expose something, and instead of getting justice, he got erased. I kept scrolling, finding old social media posts. He barely had an online presence anymore, but a year ago, he was active, posting about his cases, his successes. Then suddenly, it all stopped. Like he had been wiped off the map. Paul did this. And Evelyn? She had chosen to stand beside the man who did this. My stomach turned. Just then, my phone vibrated. A text. I grabbed it, my breath hitching for half a second when I saw the name. Evelyn. Hey. Just got home. Where are you? I stared at the message. Then I checked the location again. She was lying. She was still at Paul's. A slow, bitter smile crossed my face. So that's how she wanted to play this? Fine. Let her lie. Let her dig herself deeper. Because I wasn't just going to catch her. I was going to bury her. I let the text sit there, unread. Let her wonder. Let her wait. For months, maybe even longer, she had been lying to my face, slipping out of our life like it was nothing. She thought I'd never question it, never put the pieces together. She thought I'd just go to bed, wake up, and play my role like always. Not anymore. I leaned back in my chair, staring at my phone, thinking. She was still at Paul's, and yet she was texting me like she had just walked through our front door. A test, maybe. Trying to gauge my reaction before she actually came home. I took my time before responding. Just out. Be home later. Simple. Distant. Let her feel that shift. Let her sense that something was off. A few minutes passed, and then. Out where? I smiled to myself. She never asked questions like that before. She was starting to worry. I didn't reply. Instead, I pulled up Mark Reynolds' name again and did something reckless. I got in my car and started driving. I didn't know if he'd talk to me, but I wasn't just going to let him shut me out. Claire was right. Paul didn't just ruin careers, he erased people. And I needed to know exactly what I was up against. It took 20 minutes to get to his address, a small worn-down apartment building on the other side of town. The kind of place you end up when you've been blacklisted from your own industry. I knocked, waiting. No answer. Knocked again, harder. Finally, a lock clicked, and the door cracked open. Mark Reynolds looked nothing like the polished lawyer I had seen in his old articles. He had the tired, wary look of a man who had been through hell and never really made it back. His eyes flicked to me, then past me, scanning the street before he spoke. I told you not to call again. I held his gaze. So I came in person. He sighed, rubbing his hand over his jaw. Jesus. You're persistent. I don't have a choice, I said. Paul's in my life now, whether I like it or not. Mark let out a short laugh, dry, humorless. Then you're already screwed. I pushed forward. I need to know what you tried to expose. He studied me for a long moment, then shook his head. You don't want to go down this road. I'm already on it. Something in my tone must have convinced him, because he exhaled sharply and stepped aside. 5 minutes. Then you leave. I walked in. The place was barely lived in. Empty liquor bottles, stacks of old case files, a couch that looked like it doubled as his bed. This was a man who had lost everything. Mark sat down and gestured at a chair. I didn't take it. I wanted answers, not comfort. What did Paul do? I asked. Mark let out a bitter laugh. What hasn't he done? Give me specifics. He ran a hand through his hair, debating. Then, finally. He runs the firm like a goddamn cartel, Mark said. It's all about leverage. Blackmail. If you want to move up, you owe him. And if you refuse. He gestured around at his rundown apartment. You end up like me. Or worse. My stomach tightened. And Evelyn? I forced myself to ask. Mark frowned. Your wife. She's involved with him. Mark exhaled through his nose. Then she's in deeper than you realize. The words hit like a fist to my gut. I tried to expose him, Mark continued. Gathered evidence, went through the proper channels. But Paul's got people everywhere. Before I could do anything, the firm turned on me instead. Suddenly, I was the bad guy. Fake misconduct claims, ethics violations, even a lawsuit that drained me dry. By the time it was over, no one would touch me. My career was dead. I swallowed hard. And the people who helped him, like Evelyn. What happens to them? Mark's expression darkened. They think they're untouchable. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. Until the day they aren't useful anymore. Then Paul cuts them loose. And trust me, he makes sure they have nothing left when he does. A cold shiver ran down my spine. Evelyn thought she was in control. That she could balance her career, her deal with Paul, and our marriage like it was just another case to manage. But she had no idea she was just another pawn to him. And when the time came, he'd ruin her, just like he ruined Mark. Unless I got to him first. I stepped back toward the door. Thanks for your time. Mark shook his head. Don't thank me. And don't come back here. If Paul finds out you're digging, he cut himself off and stood up, walking to the door and unlocking it. Just be careful, Landon. I stepped out into the cold night air, my mind racing. Paul thought he had all the power. Thought he could manipulate Evelyn, erase Mark, and keep running his little empire without consequences. But I wasn't like them. I wasn't playing by his rules. And by the time I was done, he'd be the one with nothing left. I drove home in silence, my mind moving too fast to keep up with any one thought. Mark's warning sat heavy in my chest. Paul cuts them loose when they're no longer useful. Evelyn thought she was making the smart move, securing her future, climbing the ladder. But she was just another disposable piece in Paul's game. And me? I wasn't even a piece, I was a problem. I pulled into the driveway and saw Evelyn's car. She was home. I sat there for a second, gripping the wheel, steadying my breath. I wasn't going to confront her yet. I needed more proof, more control. If I went in there blind, she'd do what she always did, lie, manipulate, twist things until somehow, I was the unreasonable one. Not this time. I got out and walked inside, my steps measured. She was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, like she hadn't just spent the night at another man's house. Like she hadn't just lied to my face. She looked up, smiling like nothing was wrong. Hey, you're home late. I studied her for a second. She had changed clothes, but I noticed the small details, the barely smudged mascara, the faint scent of wine on her. She had come home just before me. Probably waited until she saw me read her text before driving back. I forced a neutral expression. Yeah. Got caught up. She tilted her head, like she was testing my mood. Everything okay? Unbelievable. She was good. Too good. If I hadn't seen her location myself, I might have actually believed she had been here all night, waiting for me. I sat down in the armchair across from her. Yeah. Just a long day. She gave me that soft, concerned look she always used when she wanted me to open up. You seemed off earlier. Are you sure nothing's wrong? There it was. The bait. If I took it, if I started questioning her, she'd find a way to turn it around. So I just smiled. I'm fine. She hesitated, then nodded slowly, like she wasn't sure if she believed me. Good. Let her wonder. I leaned back. How was your night? A flicker of something, just for a second, before she composed herself. Oh, you know. Just work. Came home, had some wine, relaxed. I nodded, pretending to accept that answer. She was still watching me, studying my reactions. Then she yawned, stretching her arms. I'm exhausted. Think I'll head to bed. I forced a casual tone. I'll be up in a bit. She hesitated, but didn't push. Just gave me one last look before heading upstairs. I stayed in the living room, listening to the sound of her footsteps retreating. She thought she got away with it. Thought I was still blind, still predictable. But I wasn't going to be passive anymore. I pulled out my phone and checked my saved location on her car. It was still marked. Tomorrow, I was going to find out exactly what she and Paul were hiding. And when I did, Evelyn wouldn't even see me coming. I barely slept that night. I laid there in bed, staring at the ceiling while Evelyn slept soundly beside me, as if nothing had changed. As if she wasn't sneaking around with another man. As if she hadn't spent the night lying straight to my face. Every breath she took, slow and even, made my stomach turn. By the time the sun came up, I was already awake, showered, and dressed. I moved through my morning routine just like always, pretending things were normal. Evelyn followed her routine too, up at 6:45, shower, light breakfast, coffee in her travel mug. Every step calculated, every movement controlled. We barely spoke. Just a simple morning, followed by an empty, busy day today. I played along. Kept my voice neutral. I wanted her to believe she still had me fooled. She kissed me on the cheek before leaving, just like she always did. But this time, I barely felt it. The moment she was out the door, I grabbed my keys and left, too. I wasn't going to work. I was going after her. I pulled up her car's saved location and waited until she was a few miles away before following. I kept my distance, just far enough not to be obvious, but close enough to track her movements. At first, it seemed routine, normal commute, same route she always took to her office. But then, 2 blocks before the firm, she turned. Not normal. I slowed, hanging back as she pulled into a small, private parking lot behind a cafe. Then, a few seconds later, another car pulled in. Pull. I gripped the steering wheel, my breath steady but my hands tight. Evelyn stepped out of her car first, dressed sharply, every detail of her appearance polished. Paul followed, walking right up to her. They didn't kiss. They didn't touch. But the way they stood close, the way Evelyn tilted her head toward him slightly, listening intently, it was intimate. She was comfortable with him. Too comfortable. I grabbed my phone and snapped a few photos through the windshield. I didn't know if I'd need them yet, but I wanted something. Proof. Evidence. Anything to remind myself that this wasn't some misunderstanding, some overreaction. After a few minutes, they both went inside the cafe. I debated my next move. Confronting them now wouldn't do me any good. I needed to know why. Was this just about the affair? Or was it about something bigger? Paul's power plays, his control over the firm, the corruption Mark had warned me about? I made a quick decision and parked a few spots away. I wasn't leaving until I got answers. So I stepped out of my car, shoved my hands in my pockets, and casually walked toward the cafe. I wasn't just spying anymore. I was getting inside. The cafe was small, the kind of place professionals used for quick, quiet meetings. Nothing too public, but nothing too hidden either. The air smelled like roasted coffee and fresh bread, but I barely noticed. My focus was on them. Evelyn and Paul sat in a corner booth, angled slightly away from the entrance. I slid into a seat at the opposite end of the room, far enough not to be obvious but close enough to hear if I focused. Evelyn was leaning in, speaking in a low, measured voice. Paul nodded along, completely relaxed, like he owned the place. Like he owned her. I pulled out my phone and opened the voice recorder, setting it on the table beside my coffee. I didn't expect to hear much, but I wanted something. Then I caught a few words. "Not a problem," Paul was saying. "We'll handle it." Evelyn exhaled sharply. "You say that, but if anyone finds out..." "They won't." Paul's tone was dismissive, confident. She ran a hand through her hair, glancing around like she was nervous. "You don't know that. It's too risky." Risky. I stiffened. This wasn't just about them sneaking around. This was bigger. Paul leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice. "Evelyn, listen to me. If you keep your head down and stick to the plan, you'll be partner by the end of the year. Everything we worked for will pay off. Everything we worked for." My stomach turned. This wasn't just about her. She and Paul were in this together. She hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Fine. But I don't want this getting messy." Paul smirked. "Messy? Come on, Evelyn. We're lawyers. Messy is what we do best." I clenched my jaw so hard my teeth ached. They were up to something, and it was way worse than an affair. Evelyn sat back, glancing at her watch. I should go. I don't want. She stopped. I followed her gaze and realized she was looking right at me. Our eyes met. For a split second, she froze. Then her whole face shifted, controlled, composed, like she hadn't just been caught plotting something. Paul followed her stare and turned, spotting me. His smirk didn't even falter. If anything, he looked amused. Like he had been waiting for this moment. Evelyn recovered fast. Too fast. She grabbed her coffee and stood, walking straight toward me. I didn't move. Didn't flinch. Just watched her, my pulse steady. She slid into the seat across from me, placing her cup down carefully. Landon. Her voice was smooth, perfectly controlled. What are you doing here? I took a sip of my coffee, matching her tone. Funny. I was about to ask you the same thing. Paul was still watching from his table, his expression unreadable. Evelyn crossed her legs, her face unreadable. Just a work meeting. I smiled. Work. Right. She tilted her head, eyes narrowing slightly. Why are you really here? I leaned forward slightly, lowering my voice. Because I don't believe a damn word you say anymore. Her jaw tightened just a fraction. She wasn't expecting that. Paul finally stood up, walking over like he had all the time in the world. He placed a hand on Evelyn's shoulder, the touch casual, possessive. Landon, he said smoothly. You should join us. No need to sit over here by yourself. I forced myself to stay calm. He wanted a reaction. I wouldn't give him one. I met his eyes, steady. You enjoy playing games, don't you? He smirked. I enjoy winning them. Evelyn shifted slightly, but she didn't deny it. She didn't push his hand away. And that's when I knew. I wasn't dealing with a wife who made a mistake. I was dealing with two people who knew exactly what they were doing. I grabbed my phone, casually ending the recording. Then I stood up, towering over both of them. You two have fun, I said, my voice even. I'll see you at home, Evelyn. I turned and walked out without looking back. I had heard enough. Now it was time to act. I didn't go home. Not yet. I drove to a quiet parking lot and played back the recording. Evelyn's voice. Paul's arrogance. If you stick to the plan, you'll be partner by the end of the year. It was all there. Proof that this wasn't just infidelity. It was corruption. A deal made in shadows, sealed with lies. I sent the file to Claire. Tell me how to use this. Her reply came fast. Meet me in an hour. By the next morning, the wheels were in motion. Claire connected me with Mark, who finally gave me everything. Documents, emails, financial trails. Paul's entire operation, laid out in black and white. Enough to bury him. And Evelyn? She was just another piece of evidence in the case being built. Days later, it all came crashing down. Whispers turned to headlines. The firm scrambled. Paul tried to fight it, but the weight of the truth crushed him. He was disbarred. His career, his power gone. Evelyn came home in tears, shaking, begging. Landon, please. I didn't know it would go this far. I looked at her, calm. Cold. Neither did I. Then I walked away. She lost everything. No promotion, no firm, no future in law. She tried to start over, but karma was cruel. Her next husband cheated on her. Last I heard, she moved to California, alone, haunted by her choices. And me? I moved forward. Not with revenge. Not with regret. Just with the quiet satisfaction of knowing that for the first time, I had won the game.